crucial moment for climate action. To stabilise the climate, we must stop using fossil fuels in our cars and homes. Chemistry is electrifying society's transition to net zero, powering new innovations in batteries and energy storage. Scarce elements at the heart of these technologies must be sustainably sourced, used and reused. Get involved. Sustainability. Powered by chemistry.
Hello, welcome to the live session on Sustainable Food Technology and COP27, hosted by the Royal Society of Chemistry. This is a satellite event of the COP27 conference that today celebrates the Energy Day. My name is Jorge Barros, and I am Editor-in-Chief of Sustainable Food Technology, a new gold open access journal recently launched by the Royal Society of Chemistry. During the next hour, we're going to provide a view of how food technology can contribute to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals related to foodstuffs. We're going to focus mainly on Sustainable Development Goal 2, SDG 2, which is entitled Zero Hunger, but also in SDG 12, entitled Responsible Production and Consumption. First of all, let me tell you that this session is broadcast live, so you have the opportunity to participate online by submitting questions that will be answered by your experts in the final part of the session. Besides, this session is being recorded, and you will have the opportunity to see it later at your convenience, or maybe share the link with other colleagues or whatever. Well, first of all, let me tell you that, in my opinion, this session is very timely and opportune. As I told you before, this is some kind of satellite event of COP27, which is, as you will probably know, the climate change conference that is currently taking place in Egypt, in Africa. Well, let me begin this session providing some data to focus the issues that we're going to deal with during this session. First data I want to share with you is 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions are associated to food production, crops, livestock, this kind of stuff. So you can see that the food chain is very directly involved in this problem. At this point today, I think that we're going to provide some possible solutions, or at least we're going to talk about, for example, developing food processing technologies that require less energy, that require less water, that are more respectful with the environment, but also to search for alternative protein sources whose production is less contaminant and with reduced gas emissions. Second data I want to share with you, 30%, again 30%, you see that it's a significant number. 30% of the food produced is lost or wasted. I mean, it's never used by the consumers. But meanwhile, that surprisingly, more than 800 million people are suffering from hunger. So how can we improve this? Well, probably we would talk today a little bit about, for example, increasing the shelf life of food products by means of using novel preservation technologies, green and novel packaging strategies that may reduce the waste by half, but also transforming food byproducts and food waste in resources, what we have called the so-called circular economy, that allows the valorization of the food waste to produce added value food ingredients, bioactive compounds, etc. And I think that we're going to have very good contribution on these issues today. Well, but to talk about these issues and more, We have six wonderful speakers today. Three of them are going to join us live, and they belong to all continents. The five continents are going to be represented today in this session. As you see, this is a global issue that requires global solutions. Some of these speakers, the three speakers that are going to join us live, are members of our advisory board, Sustainable Food Technology, or JUR. But before introducing them to you, please let me introduce myself. I am professor of food technology at University of Santiago in Spain, and as I told you before, I am serving as editor-in-chief of Sustainable Food Technology, the new journal, the Royal Society of Chemistry. My research areas have been focused on one hand in the development of food preservation systems, for example, more efficient cooling technologies. This is a hot topic because today, I told you before, we are in the energy day of the COP27, but also biopreservation and packaging systems using natural antimicrobial agents and natural antioxidants from renewable sources such as algae, microorganisms, this kind of stuff. In this research line, I had the opportunity to edit a textbook entitled Antimicrobial Food Packaging, whose second edition has been published this year, 2022. In addition, our lab has expertise in the application of molecular biology to ensure the safety and traceability of food products, something that we're going to focus today too. It's what we call foodomics, this type of application of omic sciences to food products to ensure food safety, food authenticity, etc. For example, to trace the origin of foods, or to trace, for example, and to control that the food that we are eating is free from chemical contaminants, from biological hazards, etc. In this research area, I also had the opportunity to edit a textbook on entitled Foodomics that was published by the Royal Society of Chemistry last year, 2021. Well, now that you know me a little bit better, let's get to know the experts from our advisory board that we have today. They have joined us. Thank you very much to all of them for this. And first, we have Professor Rekha Singhal from the University of Mumbai, India. Rekha, good evening to you. Could you please provide an outline of your research area, please?
Thank you, Professor. Greetings, everyone. I am Rekha Singhal, and I work at the Institute of Chemical Technology at Mumbai as a professor of food technology. I have been working in diverse areas of food related to food, but majorly on one of the major areas is supercritical carbon dioxide extraction of food components, and it is, as we know, it is one of the green and sustainable technologies. There is a misconception that people think that it is not very cost effective, but actually it is not so. And there are many other positive contributions of this technology. For instance, we need not use petroleum based hazardous solvents. Then there are issues related to solvent residues in foods which are there. Other advantages are that it is a single step process where there is no need for removal of the solvent, and also we find that we can do this extraction within a very short time. I have been working with this technology for many food components like nutraceutical compounds from waste resources, even from microbial sources, and even edible oils. Now, very recently, I have sort of started work on integrated processing of food materials, and they are majorly based on the principles of circular economy. For instance, very recently we worked on, valorizing spent coffee. Actually, after the for the manufacturing of instant coffee, the residue left behind, it has about 15% oil, which has been worked upon. But after the oil has been extracted, the residue itself is very valuable, and we have used it in food formulations and shown that the residue can have prebiotic properties, antioxidant properties, and even some antibacterial properties. Similarly, in India, see, India is the home of spices. We are the largest producers, consumers, and even exporter of spices as well as spice constituents. So one of them being oleoresins. Now, oleoresins actually comprise only about maximum 10 to 12% by weight of the spices. So after these components are extracted, the biomass that is left behind is majorly composed of starch and cellulose. So it's a very good material for either biofuels or maybe even food applications. Uh, I mean, we try to develop ethanol production by using hydrolytic enzymes. So I think that it can be used in-house by the spice manufacturers or oleoresin manufacturers. Uh, One recent piece of work which we have done is on fractionating walnuts to get the omega 3 rich walnut oil, which we used for preparing oleogels so that vegetarians can get omega 3, and the residue, which is rich in proteins, fibers, and polyphenols, have been used in cookies. So it is like a circular economy, and walnut oil can be used for other applications as well. There are quite a few others, and for example, we have now started working on co-extraction, where the oil, for example, coconut shreds and and turmeric. So it is not only the supercritical CO2, but the oil which is coming from the coconuts also works as a solvent, and it extracts it well. So again, similar logic, we are using the co-extract as well as the residue left behind. And there are many other projects of similar kinds. So this is my background. And I have recently joined the editorial board of this wonderful journal, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity and hope that I can contribute to it positively. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rekha. Thank you. We also have Professor Linus Opara from Stellenbosch University in South Africa. Linus, good afternoon to you. Please, can you provide a brief outline of your research, please?
Thank you very much, colleagues, and the global audience. I am very, very pleased to be associated with the new journal, but also to collaborate with our colleagues around the world to ensure sustainable food systems, which I think is one of the critical components of what we're trying to do for a sustainable world. I'm a distinguished professor of post-harvest technology at Stellenbosch University, and this is an area that I've worked on during the last 30 years plus, starting from Massey University in New Zealand, and spent some time at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in terms of food policy, and then spent many years in the Middle East, in Oman, Sultan Qaboos University, to set up post-harvest research systems. But in the last 14 to 15 years, I have been had the opportunity to set up the South African Research Chair at Stellenbosch University, which is a government intervention towards innovation in the food system. And so what we have done in the last 14 years is to set up this research chair with a strategic but deliberate goal of linking production to markets. So that is our philosophy, that whatever we do in our research, the goal is to assist in the movement of produce from the field until it gets to the consumer table. So what have we done in this area towards sustainable post-harvest and food technologies? Our primary goals in our research have been to look at quantifying and reducing losses and waste. That is the key. Then the second one is to ensure that we develop and deploy technologies along the value chain to reduce these losses and waste. And the third component is to ensure that we look for opportunities for value addition and new value creation. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that And then finally, underlying this for us, particularly on the African continent, is the issue of capacity building. So we have been deliberate to make sure that we build the capacity of young people along this value chain from farm to fork. One of the programs that I would like to share with colleagues through this forum is our approach. So 14 years ago, 13 years ago, thereabout, when I arrived in South Africa, the post-service challenges are enormous. A lot of work has been done, and even on the other parts of the continent. So we developed a model of one crop at a time. So we deliberately chose pomegranate as a model crop to demonstrate these objectives that I've talked about in terms of quantifying losses, measuring this, and maintaining quality, reducing waste, creating new value products through minimal processing and further, sustainable processing technologies, and then helping to launch this in the market. So the pomegranate is a very, very interesting crop. I'm a chartered engineer and a certified food scientist. And so we look at technologies that can be deployed irrespective of the crop. So we are more of application, so to say. So what we have done in the last 13, 14 years is to look at the crop, knowing that what you put in influences what you get at the end of the day. So what is the quality of the raw food material that leave our farms, that leave our orchards? So we look at maturity indices at the farm level that will influence the post-harvest quality of the product, that will influence the storability, that will influence the bioactive compounds during processing and handling. So that is the first thing we did. Then we'd start looking at improved handling technologies that will reduce mechanical damage and physical damage, because we also know that these provide opportunities for infection and further spoilage along the value chain. And then the third component then we looked at, so if you look at a fruit like pomegranate, it has the peel as a model crop. It has the edible part, which we call the areoles, which contains the juice and seed. But the seed in turn contains oil, and so on and so forth. So now we developed a research program that will make sure that we have zero wastage on pomegranate, so to say. That means that every component is seen as an important bioresource along the value chain, from which we produce powders that could be condiments, from which we extract bioactive compounds that can be used in the food, in the beverage industry, even in the pharmaceutical industry, and more recently in the beauty industry as well. So we are taking this holistic approach to food science and technology by looking at total value creation. So where we have waste, we convert them into wealth. And that is the philosophy of what we do. And our goal in the near future is to begin to apply this principle to other commodities in Africa and around the world, and hopefully contribute to disseminating this knowledge through our new journal. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Linus. Wonderful. And now we also have Professor Indrawati Wang from the University of Otago in New Zealand. And I want to thank especially Indra for staying up late today, because it's about 2 a.m. in the morning over there in New Zealand. Good evening or good night, good morning for you, Indra. Please, can you provide a brief outline of your research?
Okay, hello everyone. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Indrawati Wi. I'm Professor of Food Science and also the head of the Department of Food Science at University of Otago in Dunedin, New Zealand. So I'm pleased and feeling honored to be invited as a guest editor also for the new journal coming from Royal Society of Chemistry for Sustainable Food Technology. Currently, I'm leading a program, what we call Sustainable Food Productions, which is I'm leading in the development of non-thermal processing and preservations. So the aim of the development of this technology, for example, like pulse electric field processing, low heat, thermal processing for pasteurizations and sterilizations, including high pressure processing, is to reduce the use of energy and water, but as well as how we can more efficiently preserve food products so that we can guarantee the security and also the availability of the product itself with a high quality and high safety. So by doing that, we can reduce the waste coming from the premium product, as well as we try to develop a new technology without any very complicated extractions to extract all of the valuable bioactives and also semi-refined fibers and also protein so that we can also use from the waste go to the food system or go to the pharmaceutical industry. So currently that we also produce a lot of product that is coming from the byproduct. So the idea behind that we would like to have more circular economy and also upcycle food. We work across the country, so nationally, so that we can see the optimizations in the process itself, as well as we work with the people from overseas to understand what kind of technology that can be applied here in New Zealand and also worldwide. So currently also in our department, we have a special group, what we call it food-based innovations, which is cover all of the three components that is important to understand the consumer behavior, especially the waste is not only from the farm, but majorly also coming from the consumer. So we would like to also understand how we can do it to understand the consumer and then also predict the productions in the company and also how we can make a decisions to for our agriculture and farming. So the idea of farm to fork, but also now we are developing quite strongly the component of the social science in our research from fork to farm to understand how we can make efficient in the food security and affordability worldwide.
Thanks very much, Indra. Wonderful. And now we want to share some recorded contributions from some selected experts. The first clip that we want to show is from Professor Wang. Qing is Associate Editor of Sustainable Food Technology for a new journal, and she's also professor at the University of Maryland at the United States. You will see that Qing is performing some cutting-edge research on food nanotechnology in the development, as you will see, nanostructures of protein nature, biopolymers, etc., for the encapsulation on delivery of bioactive compounds to prepare coatings, etc. Okay, let's go ahead with the clip, please.
Our research focuses on developing different nano and microstructures from food protein and food polysaccharides, and they are considered as polymers. So we have developed successfully from food like zinc, the corn zinc, and the wheat gluten, and the milk proteins, including casein and whey proteins, and also polysaccharides like chitosan, alginate, and also chitosan derivatives. Right now we're doing some chitin works, and we've developed different nanoparticles, nano emulsions, nano laminates, and we try to use them to encapsulate and deliver the bioactive components in the food systems. And besides doing this, we also have carried out many research on this biodegradable films and edible coatings on the food products, and it's considered as sustainable approaches to advance the food technology. And I hope my contributions in this journal on the sustainability of food technology will advance effectively to this field. And I also welcome different collaborations from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Okay, Rekha, please, do you have an opinion? What do you think about the points that Wang has raised?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful piece of work, particularly nano encapsulation and micro encapsulation. I have a concern because use of nanoparticles in food, there are safety concerns. But I believe this should be all right because these are organic nanoparticles and not really the inorganic ones. Uh, I think it's a good piece of work, and there will be positive contributions to sustainability from this area of work.
Thank you, Rekha. Linus, please, can you provide your feedback from the points that raised Professor Chingwan?
Thank you very much. I think Professor Wang has raised some very, very important area that provide tremendous opportunity to tackle the global challenge of waste in our food system. A lot of people do not realize that if you look at individual biomaterial, let's say agricultural material, there are many of them that the food component, the direct food component, is not even up to 50%. So what are the rest of it? It's like peels, like skin, like seed, like other types of fiber that do not feed directly into the consumed food system. So what do we do with this? Traditionally, this ends up in the landmines, in the landfills, and maybe block our seaways and so on and so forth. So the research into the area of biopolymers, particularly that have potential into the food system, provides tremendous opportunity for sustainable food systems. So that is one point. I think the other component then is that for us to really introduce this, to transform this and introduce them into the food system or other biomaterials of economic value, the issue of safety becomes important. But because in some cases during the processing, additional materials may need to be added. They could be chemical, they could be physical. So the safety component is something that needs to be looked at in the future in order to harness the potential of these bioproducts.
Thanks, Linus. Indra, what can you say? What can you say about the clip, please, your contribution?
I think I add to all of my colleagues. I agree with you. This technology is quite promising for handling waste, but also we need to be aware about the food safety, and especially if you are using this technology for food, we need to think carefully how this emulsion will be digested and functioning in our gut, and whether they can still functioning well, or what is the other challenge around the long-term impact. So I think we need to see the impact also globally and holistically, not only used for the for the benefit in the reducing waste, but also to see the impact afterwards. Most of the applications that we can see from here is very promising too for green packaging, because this technology can also be used for encapsulations too.
Thanks, Indra. Thanks, all of you. Now we're moving to our second clip, and this clip has been recorded by Professor Marco Poiana. Marco is professor at the Mediterranean University of Reggio Calabria in Italy, and he's also a member of the Advisory Board of Sustainable Food Technology. As you will see in the clip, Marco is performing amazing research in the valorization of food byproducts, both to obtain high-value ingredients, but also to reduce the environmental impact of the waste. Okay, let's go ahead with the clip.
Yes, I'm a researcher of Mediterranean University of Reggio Calabria, Italy, and my main research field is the valorization of food byproducts. I think this is important because nowadays reduce the waste is produced from food processing could be a priority. Because this is an impact with the environment due to the high pollution that this waste is produced when they are put into the environment. I think that the waste is could be used in different manners. they could produce biogas or other materials. But if we see their composition, we could find very interesting compounds. And often these compounds are the cause of pollution when this waste is put into environment. So if we extract these compounds, we reduce this impact, and in the same way, we obtain important fractions that we can use in the food manufacturing itself for extend the shelf life of foods, or provide these biologically active compounds, such as antioxidants, for example, to the consumers. Some examples, very interesting, could be the oil extract from the olives. More than 80% of the olives become a waste, pomace or wastewater. Inside these fractions, there are a higher quantity of polyphenols that don't permit biodegradation of this matter. If we extract these compounds, we could, in a second step, degrade the matter, the waste, and we obtain an interesting fraction that, from a point of view of economical side, have a high value, and from the other side, the environmental point of view, reduce the impact and improve the sustainability of the processing in the whole. I think, and I hope, this COP27 should have some important goals, because we all of us know the importance of the climate change, and we see year by year that this change, what this change produce. Hottest summers, but also falls like this, very hot, and the agricultural production is in some troubles.
Okay, thank you very much. Rekha, what do you think of the points that have been raised by Marco?
Yeah, hello. I think the points are well expressed, but I would like to add that if we are using extraction technologies for extracting compounds from the waste resources, we should see whether it is truly sustainable by actually checking out the life cycle analysis. For example, if we are using organic solvents which are derived from petrochemicals, and then we use those solvents to extract the compounds, whether it is truly sustainable. So I believe that, with all such work, if we can do some simulations or some life cycle analysis to really understand that these are truly sustainable, it will actually be very good. The second point which I think I can say is, many times the components which we extract from food waste, they are not consistent, because the quantity varies, the profile also varies. For example, polyphenols, there will be a huge variation, not just in the content but in the individual components as well. So sometimes we do not get consistency. Whether it can be accepted or not accepted, that's a different story. But these are some things which I feel we need to really understand. And I think there are simulations which one could see. And definitely we have to work out the balance nitrogen balance, oxygen balance, and check out the life cycle analysis. And scale up, obviously, scale up is also an issue. So maybe work is required in these directions, but if we all come together, these issues can be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. You have just suggested the green extraction. That's really, really important. I think that we will have the opportunity to talk about this in the final discussion. Thanks very much. Now, Linus, what is your opinion about the contribution of Marco?
Thank you very much. I think our colleague Marco has actually touched on an important aspect that I think has two dimensions in terms of what is going on now at COP27. The first one is that it clearly shows that depending on the lens you are wearing, a lot of people usually accuse the food system, particularly backwards in terms of agriculture and its contribution, that negative image and the role on the environment and sustainability of the planet. But what we have seen from the type of research that Marco has highlighted is the role of technology to turn things around. And what do I mean by that? I think there is another element in the discussion about between what we normally call the traditional developed and developing countries. And you hear about these pledges, about the financial contribution some people should make to provide, to ensure sustainable systems. And I'm thinking that if there are opportunities to actually focus now on the application of sustainable technologies to the industrialization of the food system in some of these poor developing countries, targeting some of these technologies, I think there's a very good opening, very good opportunity for science, technology to lead the way. For example, we know the fundamental role of energy, and in this case, what we call sustainable energy systems, across the food value chain. In some parts of the world, it is not even possible to process, even on a small-scale retail level. So what that means is that the potential, for example, for biogas production, which he has talked about, is opportunity, not just about the food, but supply energy also from the raw material that's already been produced to support the development of sustainable food systems. I think this is something that really needs attention. It is not just the work of food technologies alone. It means we now start talking about interdisciplinary teams that will now drive policy through the type of evidence that we provide. So to me, this is quite an interesting area, especially living on the African continent, where you have the highest incidence of undernutrition, you have the highest incidence of poverty, but you also have the highest number of people that are engaged in primary production. The question then is, how do you assist these people to participate in economical value chains? And so the valorization, the processing, whether it's at the family or village level, becomes very, very important. And what we are talking about now is not just about valorization of food for direct consumption, but also the secondary products that could create more sustainable energy and so on and so forth. I think this is a very good opening for us to think about in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Linus. A lot of options are open. Indra, what's your opinion about the clip?
I think I agree with my colleagues. This area is quite important for us. One thing that we need to see is actually when we are recycle the waste is around the complexity, the process itself, that we do not use more energy, more costs, and also will give also different impact to the environment. So that is one thing. The second one, when you do extractions, is also to be considered whether it is zero waste or not, because we do not want to create another new waste that the environment has to carry. So the way how I see the waste is sometimes not only to see how we can use the byproduct, but how we can use the byproduct smartly. Especially like it is pointed out of my colleagues from India, there is also still not consistent about the content, about the bioactive that you can extract, but also the technology that you use. It is also an extra energy that we need to consume, but also who carry all of the costs will be also consumer. So we need to see also the point, like from my colleagues here, Professor Opara, also see how actually we can also downskill the use of the food waste is also more closer to the consumer, and how we can smartly use that byproduct is more smartly, at least less process, so that we also create less impact in the different byproduct after extraction. So you need to see like zero waste from the beginning till the end of the processing.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Indra. Before seeing the next clip, just remind the audience that please feel free to submit your questions. We are expecting to receive your input, and we will try to answer questions that we receive at the end of the final part of the session. Now we're going to see the next recorded contribution, in this case from Dr. Asa Silotri-Naik. Asa works for the Technical University in Dublin, Ireland, and she is a member of the Food Group of the Royal Society of Chemistry. She wants to share with us her expertise in the valorization of food waste. Okay, let's go ahead with it, please.
Hello, I'm Dr. Asa Silotri-Naik, an assistant lecturer in food science and sustainability at Technological University Dublin, and I'm going to talk about food loss and waste. Roughly 1/3 of the food produced in the world for human consumption is lost or wasted. It is very important to reduce this food loss and waste in order to make the production of food reduce the critical costs associated with that, increase the efficiency of the food system, and improve food security and move towards environmental sustainability. All these are in sync with UN SDG 12, which talks about responsible consumption and production. What we need to do is reduce this food loss and waste across the food supply chain, right from the production till consumption. The indicator 12.3.1 on UN SDG gives us two different indices to measure this food loss. One is food loss index, which helps us to quantify or measure the food loss from production to retail, and food waste index, which helps us measure the loss from retail up to consumption. If you were to see the food waste or food loss across various phases of the food supply chain, you will see that at the stage of consumption, the carbon footprint of food waste is huge compared to the other phases. If you were to also compare across different commodities, you will see that the food loss or waste for cereals, vegetables is much more than for, say, oil crops or pulses. Another interesting fact over here would be that aquatic systems that produce only 1.1% of the food actually result in 9.9% of the global footprint. So there has to be something done for aquatic byproducts. Researchers are trying to introduce technologies and innovative solutions for reducing this food waste and loss by bioconverting the agro-industrial waste into interesting molecules like, for example, bioactive peptides, ingredients, like functional food products, as well as some techno-functional ingredients. We at TAGUS and at TU Dublin have worked on marine byproducts like mussels. Why mussels, you might ask? 27% of the mussels that are produced are rejected as byproducts. What do I mean by byproducts? These are plainly rejected for aesthetic values. For example, the mussels could be small in size, it could be broken shell containing mussel, or barnacle fowls, bisthread containing, etc. This translates into huge losses. What we did in Ireland was to collect mussels from various parts of Ireland, coastal regions, for example, Killary Harbour. We also devised a biofractionation scheme in which we said that we are going to utilize different parts of the mussels, for example, shells, meat, bisthreads, and extracellular fluids. Using enzymes, we converted the meat of the mussels into interesting molecules, for example, bioactive peptides with functionalities. These molecules that were isolated from marine byproducts could have applications in, say, nutraceutical products. It could be used as pigments, additives, flavoring agents, also as aquaculture feed, and the microbial cultures that are isolated from these marine byproducts could be used for producing interesting biomolecules with industrial application. So marine byproduct valorization is a very, very interesting field. The second byproduct that we looked at was brewer's pen grain. Many researchers are trying to valorize this co-product, which is produced at around 39 million tons from the global brewery industry. What can be done with the brewer's pen grain is very, very interesting. My team and I, we tried to isolate protein and lipids from the brewer's pen grain, and we use them as antioxidants and emulsifying ingredients in food products. Other researchers have been able to convert the protein from BSG into bioactive peptides, like, for example, for diabetes or for reducing hypertension. There's another interesting application of this, which would be fermentation of the brewer's pen grain to increase the nutritional composition. Researchers, for example, from University of Limerick were able to convert brewer's pen grain into hypertensive peptides or anti-hypertension peptides. Further, there were other researchers who use certain fungal varieties to ferment brewer's pen grain and make it enhanced nutritional value, for example, higher amino acid content, antioxidants, vitamins, and therefore this translates into higher feed conversion efficiency when it is used as a feed for cows. We can also use brewer's pen grain, for example, the fiber from it, protein from it for bread making, for brewers' crackers, also for granola for breakfast, etc. And finally, brewers' pen grain or cider byproducts can be fermented and converted into biodegradable films to reduce the impact that plastic packaging has. So in conclusion, I think valorization is necessary to switch from linear to a circular economy approach. If we want to really hit the goal by 2030 of halving the global food waste, there's also a need for coordinated approach to managing and regulating side streams from food sector, as well as the industry needs incentives to be able to innovate and adapt these strategies.
Thank you very much. Wonderful contribution. What I like about ASA's work is that she has done some extremely interesting research with the byproducts and waste, but not only to produce food ingredients, but also to extract bioactive compounds in different applications as nutraceutical, against hypertension, against diabetes. So this does not only cover the objectives SDG 2 or SDG 12, but also is related to objective SDG 3, which is human health and welfare. So I like it really. I really enjoy this contribution. Rekha, what's your opinion about assessment?
Yeah, I think it's a very good piece of work, and the potential is huge. But my thoughts again take me back to separation technologies. For example, the peptides that we can get from the marine resources, we can hydrolyze them, we can get the biopeptides. But how are we going to separate that, and that too at an industrial scale? So my concern, or rather not concern, I would say further thought process could be whether it is cost effective, and also are we adding more energy to recover something. So whether it would be better to use the bioproduct in its entirety rather than trying to sometimes fractionate it, or perhaps we can combine two or three byproducts from different industries and then try to develop some valorization, uh, not really related to Aza's work, but an example to support this statement. For example, we have pumpkin seeds, which are which are a byproduct of, say, various varieties of pumpkins, and we have mango peels, which are again a byproduct of mango processing. Now, these mango peels have carotenoids. Pumpkin seeds have a lot of oils. Can we sort of blend the waste and we use their complementarity, and then try to valorize them? I believe, it will result in energy savings as well, and we can tackle maybe two wastes at a time, where both are contributing in their own respect. But yes, It is a very interesting area. And even from mussels, we can separate out proteins, then also the chitin, chitosan, uh, and if there are some, like for example, astaxanthin, and integrated bioprocessing with considerations for scale up and separations. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. The astaxanthin idea that you propose is really, really interesting. Very, very good idea, Rekha. Now, Linus, what's your opinion about ASA's contribution, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I think ASA has touched a sector of the food system that I think, in my view, that we are still learning. We don't know much about. And I think in the last 100 years, there have been significant advances in terms of agronomy or field crop production and their role in our food system. What we are realizing now in the last 10, 15 years is that the global demand for protein is skyrocketing. And the balance that is required to give us nutritious diets is very, very huge. And so we now have what we may call a transition in nutrition that is happening, particularly in developing and emerging economies. So the challenge there and question is, where are we going to get these new sources of protein food or food protein to meet the demands for a balanced diet? And I think that's where the opportunity really lies here, is how can we now convert these supposedly waste bioresources into alternative sources of feed, for instance. Not direct human consumption, but also maybe for the livestock sector that can have been demonstrated by nature to transform them quickly into other sources of food system without necessarily going through the traditional intensive outdoor production that we know the negative impacts on the climate. I think, to me, this is a very, very exciting, interesting area here. So I think that's something that should be encouraged in terms of research moving forward. Because if the protein consumption of the developing countries, which constitute the large percentage of global population, comes close to 30% of what happened in the West, just think about the impact on the sustainability of our food system. So I think this is a very important area that really needs to be encouraged and looked at, particularly in terms of marine raw materials and so on and so forth.
Thanks very much, Linus. And finally, Indra, what's your opinion about ASA's contribution?
Yeah, I think her contributions will be valuable for our sustainability. One thing that we need to be aware, a lot of problem is with the consumer and also the standard in the food industry. The outsize standards of the, for example, like mussel, sometimes it is rejected. So I think we need to go back again to the problem itself, that maybe we need to have more uniform when you harvest them. So we also respect with the size of the mussel that they can also catch for the food productions, so that we can eliminate those out of the standard size. And we now we need also to think how we can promote to the consumer whether they can also eat the food that is ugly. What does it mean with ugly is the size they are not common, maybe small or more variation. So that is also the pressure is coming from the consumer, because consumer always pressure us to have always the standard size, while in the farming we always have the different form. The other things that I like from her work is around the use of the byproduct is go to the feed. So we need to have a balance between plant and animal-based foods, because if we see, for example, like from grass or fiber, we cannot digest them all. We have no system to digest, like cellulose, for example. So having like cattle to digest, it can also provide protein. So those things is actually the balance where we need to look at, not looking for a new sources, but how we can balance with effective way, how we can process those byproduct materials to gain the high protein intensive sources. So that is one thing that in the marine productions, I like the way how she also developed a different technology to isolate the byproduct and also the peptide. But again, like what I pointed out, all of the energy, all of the processing afterwards, we need to also assess life cycle assessment and what is the extra impact with the additional actions and processing. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Indra. And thank you to the three experts that have recorded their wonderful contributions. Now we are in the final part of the discussion. We had three topics for today. I think that the first topic has already been discussed, the valorization of food waste. So we are moving to the other two topics that are first, non-thermal processing techniques, or we can also say moderate thermal treatment, okay, maybe an appendix of this, and green packaging. What happens to these technologies? Are they going to provide solutions? What novel preservations are under the spotlight today? We are hearing a lot about cold plasma or plasma activated water. So this is going to be a point that I want your opinion about. But as the time goes by, I think that we are running out of time. So I want you to talk a little bit also about food transparency and food traceability. What do you think, which are the main hazards in this area? The origin of foods, the chemical and biological risks that we have to face in the food to guarantee that the food is free of these problems and is a safe food to the consumers. So I want your opinion about these two topics in this final part of the session. So Rekha, what's your opinion about these hot topics?
Yeah, you mentioned about non-thermal processing, and I think you coupled it with green packaging. Did you say about that as well? See, when it comes to green packaging, it is very much important, and a lot of work is happening using various kinds of biomaterials. But we need to match them. We need to have some benchmarks for every product. What are the requirements of packaging? For example, are they meeting the mechanical strength? Is it meeting the barrier properties? Is it meeting the optical properties? And more than anything else, I think even migration from these green packaging into the food and whether the food is getting altered. So from the perspective of utilizing, biopolymers or having green packaging, I think these need to be seen. uh, Apart from that, the fact that they are themselves green, they are likely to be biodegradable. They will be better biodegradability. So, what would be the shelf life of the food which is packaged in such kind of packaging material? Because at a commercial scale, the products are expected to have some kind of a shelf life. So, whether it will be, how does it compare with respect to the conventional materials? As far as the non-thermal processing goes, many of them have emerged in recent times. They are quite promising, uh, but many of them have not really reached commercial level. They are either at a lab scale or they are at a pilot scale. So I think that would be required. And I think one such example I had noted down was pulsed electric field, which people are trying to see whether that can overcome the drawbacks of membrane processing, particularly with respect to fouling. But again, although wastewaters which are generated from the food processing industry can be tackled by membrane technologies, but the fouling challenge is there, and which can be overcome by pulsed electric field as an example, but then whether it is scalable. So this is something which I had noted down. Um, and as far as I think valorization, I think we have spoken a lot. But since I have an opportunity, I will just make one point. This valorization of food can be done at both pre-harvest and post-harvest. At the pre-harvest, I think it can be done with integrated farming. For example, we have crop husbandry with poultry, duckery, aquaculture, and many more, sericulture. Whereas post-harvest can be actually done with integrated food processing, where the bioproducts are utilized, as we have already heard, for either food purposes, feed purposes, fuel purposes, or even non-food applications. So I think these thoughts or work in these areas would address many of the SDGs, for example, 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So I think these are some of my thoughts which I could express. Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Rekha. Linus, what's your opinion about these two hot topics, please?
Thank you very much. Now, I think the issue of green packaging provides a tremendous opportunity, particularly at the retail consumer level. Because we do know, if you look at SDG 12.3, when it talks about the targets for 2030, which is not very far away, the specific mention of the target of halving wastage is at the retail level and consumer level. Why is that? Because that is the stage, particularly in developed countries, where wastage is highest. And of course, losses, in terms of handling losses, is more in developing countries. And we have heard earlier that the economic costs and environmental costs is much higher when wastage happens at the retail or consumer level. So that means our deployment of technologies and development of technologies, we have more chance of greater impact if we can reduce more at those levels. Well, what does that mean in terms of packaging? Well, there is a lot we can learn in the sustainable food technology area in terms of trying to understand nature much, much better, what we call biomimicry in sustainable food systems. If you look at most of the products, raw materials, they either come as pods, or they come as fruit, or they come in nuts, or they come in shells. And they have been designed in such a way that they only disperse at a particular time to achieve particular functions. And I think those of us that work in the area of sustainable food systems, particularly packaging, I think there's a lot we can learn from nature to begin to look at how we present food to the end user, using green technologies that perhaps can make the whole product and the packaging we present consumable. A lot of work has already started in that area, but that is something that I believe there's a lot of opportunity. The last comment I will make is the area of food transparency, traceability, and authenticity. Now, food is a very evocative word, we know that. So a lot can happen with our cars, about our clothing, about our perfume, and we can just run around it on an individual level. But the issue of food, despite the low value in terms of what we spend in our pockets in developed economies, is something that evokes a lot of emotion. So that means if we also want to help to assure confidence in our food system, we need to start looking at the issue of traceability and integrate it, a priori from the beginning in terms of what we do about food. And this is particularly important, especially in developing economies. I keep emphasizing this, that we need to find ways to allow technology assist smallholder farmers or those in emerging countries to participate in the global food system. And they cannot do that if they cannot authenticate the supply or the origin of their products. In Nigeria, for example, we know that container shipments of, let's say, aquatic foods, fish, go to Europe, the whole container is dumped, rejected, because there is no evidence related to transparency and traceability. So this is an area I think that the importance will increase in the future, especially on the impact on the safety of our food system. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linus. Indra, your opinion about these hot topics, please.
So I will add also to my colleague's opinion. So in the first point that I want to discuss is about the investment of our research and technology for the non-thermal processing and or moderate heat processing. In this area, we can use this technology basically to replace the current thermal processing that use a lot of energy and also emissions. And for example, like pulse electric field processing, this has been done commercially that we can run in the big bulk. So it is not in the lab size anymore. So we can also do for the extractions, but also the waste treatment. The second one that pointed out about the green packaging, we need to be careful to talk about everything has to be green because the functions on the packaging itself, whether it is coming from the fresh produce or processed produce. Because when you have packaging contact with food, we need to make sure that ingredients that we use is not to transfer and then create another challenge with our food safety because of the migrations of the molecules that is unexpected. So there is still a challenge. It is a good idea, but still that we need to guarantee about food safety in that side. The last topic that I really like to see is around the food traceability and transparency. So currently in our discipline, we also use a lot of technique, for example, like having like NMR or maybe like the isotope to track the source of the food ingredients that we put. For example, like coffee and tea. So those type of traceability technique we can combine also with the blockchain technology and Internet of Things so that we can track the source of the materials and ingredients so that we can have also fairness to the farmer where it is the ingredients come from. And then secondly, it is also for us important the adulteration. So sometimes the company that they produce, for example, like coffee from Kenya, and it is branding from the other country. So that is quite crucial. That can also disadvantage to the economy of the producer itself. The other things that we need to be careful also with now a lot of people think about plant protein, that about deforestifications. With the technique of food transparency and traceability, hopefully we can track where is the source of the new plant protein. So hopefully it is not because deforestifications and then they create new products. So this is a good and hot topic at this moment because we want to, in the other hand, we try to combat reducing the animal productions due to emissions, but at the same time, deforestification is also happen. So we need to see, like my colleagues already mentioned, we have to see overall the system and make a balance around that and a more holistic approach that we have to look at. That's from me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Indra. Okay, time goes by and we are running out of it. So we have two questions and maybe I can take care of them. First question is from Trevor that asks if carbon dioxide produced from waste food could be used for packaging. Okay, yes, we can use carbon dioxide in modified atmosphere packaging strategies because it has antimicrobial effects. So it is very widely used with this purpose to increase the cell life of foods. And as we talked at the beginning of the presentation, increasing the cell life of food may help to reduce the food waste. And we have another question from the audience about veganism. Is this the only option to control the greenhouse gases emitted on a large scale? Well, I don't think so. I agree that livestock produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, but the cultivation of some crops also produces a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that the idea would be to find alternative protein sources, for example. We have listened about insects. Let's see how these are going to take off in the market. And we have heard about, for example, single-cell proteins obtained from microorganisms, and this may be good alternatives. Okay, so that's the answer. So I'm afraid that we have to say bye because we are running out of time. So first of all, I want to thank you very much, Professor Rekha Singhal, Professor Linus Opara, Professor Indra Watioi, especially Indra for staying up late for us. Appreciate it very much. And of course, our wonderful contributions and recorded experts that recorded their contributions for us. Thanks very much. I want to thank also the wonderful team, technical team, Jim, John, Hiren, Edwin, and of course our RSC Sustainability, Sustainable Food Technology journal team, wonderful team with Anna Rukas, executive editor, Catherine, Hannah, Esther, Alex, Audra, Sarah, everybody, a wonderful team. So this is the last of our RSC Sustainability series for now. Remember that you can watch these events on the RSC YouTube channel at your convenience. I encourage you to do it because we have wonderful sessions with wonderful speakers like Professor Tom Welton from Imperial College London or Professor Jonathan Oxley from the CBI Hamburg cluster. Okay, that's all for today. Have a good day. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.